It began as an ordinary night, the kind that slips quietly into memory, until it didn't. Kansas City, Kansas. April 14th, 2007. The clock on the corner convenience store flickered. 10:47 p.m. The city's pulse had slowed, but it had not stopped. Streetlights cast long, trembling shadows across cracked sidewalks. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of rain that had passed hours before, leaving the world slick and reflective. Somewhere a dog barked, distant and uncertain. Emily Carter's footsteps echoed softly as she crossed the empty parking lot behind the old brick library. She wore a faded denim jacket, her hair pulled back, her phone clutched in one hand. The glow of the screen lit her face for a moment, a fleeting portrait of youth, hope, and the unremarkable expectation of making it home. She was seen by a passing driver who would later recall, "I saw her cross the lot then." Nothing, she just disappeared into the dark. The city was not silent. A train rumbled in the distance, its horn slicing through the night. Neon signs buzzed above shuttered storefronts. Somewhere a radio played a love song, muffled by closed windows. But in that parking lot time seemed to slow. Emily's footsteps left faint imprints in the dew, a trail of presence until suddenly they stopped. A security camera perched above a liquor store caught a fleeting glimpse, Emily's silhouette, pausing at the edge of the lot, glancing over her shoulder. The timestamp burned into the footage, 10:53 p.m. After that, nothing. No movement, no sound. Just the endless hum of the city, indifferent and unknowing. Minutes passed. The world moved on. A car rolled by, headlights sweeping across the empty sidewalk. The driver saw only emptiness. Somewhere a mother waited for a text that would never come. The city's heart kept beating, unaware that something had been torn away. At 11:12 p.m., a jogger found a phone lying face up on the sidewalk, its screen still glowing, casting a pale blue light onto the wet concrete. The device was unlocked, a half-written message unsent. There were no signs of struggle. No blood, no scream. Only the phone and the abrupt end of Emily's footprints in the dew, nowhere else to go. What happened in those 47 minutes would haunt Kansas City for nearly 2 decades. The night air, once ordinary, now felt heavy with secrets. The city would never be the same. How does someone vanish in the middle of a city with no trace? The answer would elude everyone for years to come, but the clues would not add up. Not yet. The story of Emily Carter was only beginning, before the headlines, before the search parties and the whispered fears. There was simply Emily. To know the weight of her absence, you must first know the light she brought to the world she left behind. Emily Carter was 22 years old. She lived in a small sunlit apartment above a bakery on Minnesota Avenue, where the scent of fresh bread drifted through her window each morning. Her walls were covered in Polaroids, friends laughing at bonfires, her little brother's birthday, a dog she'd rescued and named Lucky. She kept a battered journal on her nightstand, its pages crowded with dreams. Travel to Paris, learn to play guitar, make Mom proud. Her handwriting was looping, hopeful, always ending with a flourish. She worked part-time at the city library, shelving books and helping children find stories about dragons and distant planets. Her co-workers remembered her as the one who stayed late, who always had a joke or a kind word, who never let anyone leave without a smile. She was the last to leave the party. She hated goodbyes, her mother would later say, voice trembling with memory. Emily's world was small but vibrant. She loved the old movie theater on 7th Street, where she and her best friend, Tasha, would sneak in candy and whisper through double features. She called her mother every Sunday without fail, just to talk about nothing and everything. She was saving up for a car, dreaming of road trips and freedom. But for now she walked everywhere, her sneakers worn thin, her spirit undimmed. In the weeks before she vanished, Emily was planning a surprise for her father's birthday. She'd found an old record he loved, hidden away in a thrift shop, and wrapped it in blue paper. She left it on the kitchen table, a silent promise of return. Those who knew her remember the way she filled a room, not with noise, but with warmth. She was the friend who remembered your favorite song, the neighbor who brought soup when you were sick, the daughter who never forgot to say, "I love you." Her laughter lingered long after she left, but beneath the surface there were shadows. Emily had confided in her journal about feeling watched, about a strange car parked outside her building late at night. She brushed it off, telling herself it was nothing. She was young, invincible, or so she believed. No one could have guessed how quickly everything would change. In a single night, all her plans, her laughter, her unfinished dreams would be stolen away. The world she left behind would be defined not by her presence, but by the aching void she left. What dreams were stolen that night? The answer would haunt those who loved her, and those who searched for her, for years to come. But the clock was still ticking, and the last 47 minutes of Emily Carter's life were about to be revealed. The final 47 minutes of Emily Carter's known life would become a puzzle that obsessed detectives, tormented her family, and transfixed a city. Every second, every step would be scrutinized, replayed, and mapped, yet the truth would remain maddeningly out of reach. It began at 10:25 p.m. Emily left the library after her late shift, waving goodbye to her co-worker, her laughter echoing in the empty foyer. She stepped into the cool night, her breath visible in the air, and pulled her jacket tighter around her. The city was winding down, but Emily's world was still in motion. At 10:31 p.m. she stopped at the corner store, buying a bottle of water and a pack of gum. The cashier remembered her smile, the way she hummed along to the radio. Security footage showed her glancing at her phone, checking a message, then stepping back into the night. The timestamp glowed. 10:34 p.m. She walked east along Minnesota Avenue, her pace unhurried. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting pools of gold on the wet pavement. She sent a text to her friend Tasha. "Home soon, you up?" The message was marked as delivered at 10:38 p.m. Tasha would never reply. A city bus rumbled past, its headlights briefly illuminating Emily's figure. A neighbor, walking his dog, saw her cross the street, waving as she passed. She looked happy, he would later recall, like she had somewhere to be. At 10:43 p.m., Emily's phone connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot near the bakery below her apartment. She was close to home, but instead of heading upstairs, she turned down the alley behind the library, a shortcut she'd taken 100 times before. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and the faint smell of old bread. A security camera on the bakery's back door caught her silhouette, pausing as if listening. The footage was grainy but unmistakable, Emily glancing over her shoulder, her steps slowing. The timestamp 10:47 p.m. Her phone activity continued. At 10:49 p.m., she opened a new message, typing a few words before stopping. The message was never sent. At 10:51 p.m., her phone's GPS pinged its final location, midway down the alley, just steps from the sidewalk. Then silence. No more texts, no more calls. The digital trail went dark. At 11:12 p.m., a jogger found her phone on the sidewalk, screen still glowing, a half-written message open. "I think someone's—" The rest was cut off, the cursor blinking, waiting for words that would never come. In those 47 minutes, something happened that would baffle detectives for years. The city's cameras, its witnesses, its technology, all failed to capture the moment Emily Carter vanished. The timeline was complete, but the story was not. What happened in that alley? What secret did those minutes hold? The answers would remain hidden as the investigation began and chaos descended. The first hours after Emily Carter's disappearance were a blur of panic, confusion, and desperate hope. In missing persons cases, the clock is a merciless enemy. Every minute lost is a thread unraveling, evidence slipping away, memories blurring. For Emily's family, the nightmare began with a phone call that shattered the quiet of their home. At 6:13 a.m., Emily's mother, Linda, awoke to a ringing phone. Tasha's voice trembled on the other end. "Have you heard from Emily? She never made it home." Linda's heart pounded as she dialed her daughter's number, again and again, each ring echoing into emptiness. By sunrise, dread had settled in, a cold certainty that something was terribly wrong. The police arrived at Emily's apartment just after 8 a.m. Officers moved quickly, canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, showing Emily's photo to groggy residents. The city was waking up, but for the Carter family, time had stopped. Linda clung to hope, her voice raw as she pleaded with officers. She wouldn't just leave. "She always calls." Detectives scoured the alley behind the library, searching for any sign of struggle. The ground was slick with dew, Emily's faint footprints already fading. Forensic teams combed the area, bagging a discarded water bottle, a single earring, and the phone. Its screen now dark, fingerprints smudged by too many hands. The message on the phone, half-typed and unfinished, sent a chill through every investigator who read it. "I think someone's—" By midday, the story had spread. News vans crowded the curb, reporters jostling for details. The city's morning news flashed Emily's photo across every screen. Local woman missing, last seen near library. Strangers called in with tips, each one a flicker of hope. A woman claimed she saw Emily getting into a blue sedan. A man reported hearing a scream near the alley, but couldn't say when. Each lead was logged, chased, and one by one discarded. Inside the police station, a map of the neighborhood was pinned with colored tacks, each marking a possible sighting, a possible clue. Detectives worked in shifts, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, their eyes red from lack of sleep. The case was already slipping into chaos. The more they searched, the less they found. By the end of the first day, the Carter family's home was filled with friends, neighbors, and volunteers. Flyers were taped to every lamppost, every storefront window. Linda's hands shook as she pressed them into strangers' palms, begging for any scrap of information. "Please," she whispered, "just help me find my daughter." But as the sun set on the second day, hope began to waver. The blue sedan was never found. The scream was never confirmed. The earring did not match Emily's. The city's attention was fixed on the case, but the trail was already growing cold. Every hour mattered. But the answers were slipping away, lost in the chaos of those first 72 hours. And as the city held its breath, the whispers began, rumors that would soon consume the community. Fear is contagious. In the days after Emily Carter vanished, it spread through Kansas City like a silent storm, seeping into every conversation, every shadowed corner, every locked door. The city, once bustling and familiar, now felt foreign, its streets haunted by the question no one could answer. Where was Emily? At the local diner, regulars spoke in hushed tones over steaming mugs of coffee. "Did you hear about the girl?" one would whisper, eyes darting to the window. "They say she just disappeared. No trace." The waitress, who had once served Emily her favorite blueberry pancakes, now watched every stranger with suspicion. The sense of safety, so easily taken for granted, was gone. Social media became a battleground of speculation and fear. Posts multiplied by the hour, photos of Emily, theories about her last steps, warnings to stay indoors after dark. Some claimed to have seen a suspicious man lurking near the library. Others insisted it was someone she knew. Theories twisted into rumors and rumors into accusations. "I heard it was the new guy at the bakery," one post read. "He always gave me the creeps," another countered. "No, it was someone from out of town. Has to be." At a hastily organized town hall meeting, the community gathered, faces drawn and anxious. The police chief stood at the front, his voice steady but strained. "We are doing everything we can," he promised, but the words rang hollow. Parents clutched their children tighter. Teenagers who once roamed the streets after dark now hurried home before sunset. The city's rhythm had changed. Curfews, locked doors, lights left burning through the night. A candlelight vigil was held on the library steps. Hundreds gathered, candles flickering in trembling hands, the air thick with prayers and unspoken fears. Emily's mother stood at the front, her face pale in the candlelight, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Please, if you know anything, come forward. Don't let her be forgotten." The crowd murmured in agreement, but beneath the unity, suspicion simmered. Eyes lingered too long on neighbors, friends, even family. Gossip became a form of self-defense, a way to make sense of the senseless. In grocery store aisles and church pews, people traded stories, each more chilling than the last. Some said the killer was among them, the whispers went. Someone we see every day. The idea took root, growing in the fertile soil of fear. The city's collective grief was palpable, but so was its paranoia. Trust, once the glue that held the community together, began to crack. Every unfamiliar face was a threat. Every unexplained noise a warning. When trust is shattered, who do you look at differently? The question lingered in every home, every heart. But as the community turned inward, the investigation pressed on, driven now by obsession and the desperate need for answers. Obsession is a slow poison. For the detectives assigned to Emily Carter's case, it seeped into their lives, blurring the line between duty and desperation. The missing girl became more than a file, more than a face on a flyer. She became a shadow that followed them home, a question that refused to be silenced. Detective Mark Ellison was the first to feel its grip. He was a veteran, hardened by years of chasing ghosts through the city's underbelly. But Emily's case was different. It was the way her mother's voice cracked in every interview, the way the city itself seemed to mourn. He started staying late, long after the station lights had dimmed, poring over maps and timelines, replaying security footage until the images blurred. His desk became a shrine to the case, photos, evidence bags, handwritten notes, a growing constellation of red string connecting the fragments of a life interrupted. He kept a journal, its pages filled with restless thoughts and half-formed theories. "She didn't just vanish," he wrote one night, the words scrawled in the margin. "Someone took her. Someone is lying." The case invaded his dreams, replaying in endless loops. He saw Emily's face everywhere, in crowds, in reflections, in the eyes of his own daughter. The obsession spread through the team. Detective Carla Ruiz, usually methodical and unflappable, found herself snapping at colleagues, her patience worn thin by dead ends and false hope. She missed her son's birthday, her mind elsewhere as he blew out the candles. The case was a weight pressing down on all of them, a silent demand for answers. The evidence board in the squad room grew crowded, a chaotic mosaic of faces, places, and dates. Every new tip was a spark of hope, every dead end a fresh wound. They chased leads at all hours, interviewing night shift workers, combing through hours of grainy surveillance, knocking on doors until their knuckles bled. The city's secrets seemed endless, its shadows impenetrable. Late at night, Ellison would sit alone in his car outside the alley where Emily was last seen, engine idling, headlights off. He watched the darkness, searching for something he couldn't name. "I started to see her face everywhere," he confessed in his journal. "In every missing poster, every frightened parent, every empty street." The pressure mounted. The media demanded answers. The community's fear curdled into anger. The detectives felt the weight of every unsent message, every unanswered prayer. They were haunted by the knowledge that somewhere someone knew the truth and was staying silent. How far would you go for answers? For Ellison and his team, the line between justice and obsession was already fading. But the city would not wait. As the investigation spiraled, the years ahead would bring only more questions, more pain, and a trail of false hope that seemed to stretch on forever. Time is the enemy of memory. As days bled into months and months into years, the case of Emily Carter faded from the headlines, but never from the hearts of those who loved her, or those who hunted for her. The city moved on, but the investigation remained, a wound that refused to heal. The detectives clung to every new tip, every rumor, every flicker of possibility. A woman in Topeka claimed she'd seen Emily at a gas station, her hair dyed, her eyes darting with fear. The lead sent officers racing down highways, only to find a stranger with a similar face and a different story. Another tip pointed to a drifter who'd passed through Kansas City that spring. He was tracked down in Oklahoma, questioned for hours, his alibi airtight. Each time hope flared, it was quickly extinguished. The evidence board in the squad room became a graveyard of false starts. Photos yellowed at the edges, notes curled and faded. The red string, once taut with urgency, now sagged under the weight of years. Detectives rotated in and out, some retiring, others reassigned. The case file grew thicker, heavier, a silent testament to all that was lost. Forensic technology advanced, but the evidence remained stubbornly mute. The water bottle found in the alley yielded only partial prints, none matching anyone in the system. The phone's data was combed and recombed, but no new messages, no hidden clues emerged. The earring, once a beacon of hope, was proven to be a cheap trinket, sold in dozens of stores across the city. Every year, on the anniversary of Emily's disappearance, her family held a vigil. They gathered at the library steps, candles flickering in the dusk, voices trembling with the same plea, "If you know something, please come forward." The crowd grew smaller with each passing year, but the pain never lessened. Linda Carter's face aged before the city's eyes, her hope weathered but unbroken. The media moved on to new tragedies, new mysteries. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, a ghost story told to warn daughters not to walk alone at night. But for the detectives, the case was never truly cold. It lingered in the back of their minds, a question mark that refused to be erased. Then one winter, a letter arrived at the police station. It was unsigned, the handwriting shaky and uneven. The message was brief, almost taunting. "You're looking in the wrong place. She's closer than you think." The letter was logged, analyzed, dismissed as a cruel prank. But for a moment, it reignited the old fire. The hope that somewhere, buried beneath the years of silence, a clue still waited to be found. Was this a cruel prank, or the first crack in the case? The detectives could not know. The years ahead would bring only more waiting, more longing, and for Emily's family a grief that refused to fade. But the story was not over. In the quiet ache of the lost years, something was stirring, something that would change everything. Grief is a silent companion. For Emily Carter's family, it became the air they breathed, the shadow that lingered in every room, the ache that never dulled. As the world outside moved forward, their lives remained suspended, frozen in the moment Emily vanished. Linda Carter kept her daughter's bedroom exactly as it was on that April night. The bed was neatly made, a faded quilt folded at the foot. On the dresser, a row of perfume bottles gathered dust, their scents trapped in time. Emily's favorite book, its spine cracked and worn, lay open on the nightstand, a bookmark still marking the page she'd last read. Sometimes Linda would sit on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the fabric, whispering her daughter's name into the silence. Birthdays came and went, each one a cruel reminder of absence. On Emily's 23rd, Linda baked a chocolate cake just as she always had. She set a place for Emily at the table, the empty chair a silent accusation. Family photos were updated, but always with a space left for Emily, a gap that could not be filled. The world outside their windows changed with the seasons, but inside time stood still. Emily's father, Tom, retreated into himself. He spent long hours in the garage, tinkering with old radios, the static filling the space where his daughter's laughter used to be. He rarely spoke of Emily, but every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, he drove to the alley behind the library and sat in his truck, staring at the place where she was last seen. He left a single white rose on the sidewalk, then drove home in silence. Her younger brother Josh grew up in the shadow of loss. He learned to recognize the look in his mother's eyes when she thought no one was watching. The way her smile faltered, the way her hands trembled when the phone rang late at night. He stopped asking questions, stopped hoping for answers. The silence became a wall between them, built brick by brick with every year that passed. The family clung to rituals, to the small comforts of routine. Every Sunday, Linda called Emily's phone just to hear her voice on the voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Emily. Leave a message and I'll call you back." The sound was both a balm and a wound, a reminder of what was lost and what still lingered. "I still set a place for her at the table," Linda would later confess, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't let go. Not until I know. How do you grieve when there's no goodbye?" For the Carters, the answer was simple. You don't. You wait. You hope. You remember. But outside the walls of their home, the world was changing. In the cold silence of the years, a spark was about to ignite, a breakthrough that would shatter the stillness and finally bring the truth into the light. Hope, when it returns, is a fragile thing. For years, the case of Emily Carter had lain dormant, gathering dust in the archives of the Kansas City Police Department. Detectives had moved on, evidence had faded, and the city had learned to live with its unanswered questions. But in the spring of 2022, a single spark threatened to ignite everything that had been left in the dark. It began with a new detective, Detective Sarah Nguyen, young, relentless, and unburdened by the failures of the past. She arrived at the cold case unit with a reputation for seeing what others missed. On her first day, she pulled Emily's file from the shelf, its edges worn, its contents heavy with the weight of years. She read every page, every note, every dead end. But where others saw a closed door, she saw a window left ajar. Technology had changed since 2007. DNA analysis was now more precise, more powerful. Sarah requested that the evidence from the alley, the water bottle, the earring, the phone, be re-examined using the latest forensic tools. The lab technicians worked late into the night, running samples through machines that hummed and blinked with promise. Days passed. Then a call from the lab. A partial DNA profile had been recovered from the water bottle, one that had never been matched before. It was a faint trace, almost lost to time, but it was enough. The profile was uploaded to the national database, cross-referenced with every known offender, every arrestee, every forgotten sample. The breakthrough came not from a criminal, but from a distant relative, a cousin arrested for a minor offense in another state. The match was distant, but it was a thread, and Sarah began to pull. She built a family tree, tracing branches and connections, narrowing the search with each new discovery. The process was painstaking, each name a possibility, each connection a potential answer. Meanwhile, Sarah revisited the old evidence. She pored over the security footage, enhancing frames, searching for details missed by tired eyes years before. In one frame, she noticed a shadow, a figure lurking at the edge of the alley, barely visible but present. She cross-referenced the timestamp with cell tower data, narrowing the window of opportunity. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. The evidence, once silent, now whispered its secrets. The DNA, the footage, the cell data, all pointed in the same direction. For the first time in 15 years, the case was alive. After 15 years, the case was about to explode wide open. The cold silence of the past was shattered by the hum of machines, the click of a mouse, the relentless determination of a new detective. Hope, once lost, flickered back to life, but with every answer came new questions. Who was the shadow in the alley? Whose DNA had lingered on the bottle? And what would happen when the truth finally stepped into the light? The face behind the mask was about to be revealed. Shock is a quiet thing at first. A breath held, a heart stilled, a city pausing as the truth emerges from the shadows. When the DNA match was confirmed, Detective Sarah Nguyen felt the world narrow to a single chilling point. The name on the report was not a stranger. It was someone who had lived among them, someone who had blended into the fabric of Kansas City for years. The suspect was Michael Avery, a maintenance worker at the library where Emily had spent her last hours. He was a man known to many, his presence so ordinary it had become invisible. He fixed leaky faucets, swept the floors, nodded politely to patrons. He had even spoken to Emily that night, offering a smile as she left for home. No one had ever suspected him. Sarah dug deeper. She traced his movements on the night of April 14, 2007. Security logs showed he had clocked out just minutes after Emily. Cell tower records placed his phone near the alley at the exact time her digital trail went dark. Witnesses remembered seeing his old blue sedan parked behind the library, a detail dismissed in the chaos of the early investigation. Neighbors described Michael as quiet, helpful, unremarkable. He was just there, one woman recalled, her voice tinged with disbelief. I never would have guessed. But beneath the surface, Sarah found cracks. A history of minor offenses, a pattern of late-night shifts, a string of complaints that had never been followed up. The pieces, once scattered, now fit together with chilling clarity. The investigation built slowly, methodically. Sarah and her team watched Michael for weeks, gathering evidence, building a case that could not be ignored. They followed him to work, to the grocery store, to the quiet house he shared with no one. They sifted through his past, searching for any sign of remorse, any hint of guilt. But Michael remained a ghost, present but always just out of reach. The day of the confrontation arrived with little warning. Sarah approached him in the library's basement, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. She watched his face as she spoke his name, as she laid out the evidence, as she told him what they had found. Michael's eyes met hers, cold and unreadable. You have nothing, he said, his voice flat, his mask unbroken, but the mask was slipping. The weight of years, the pressure of truth, pressed down on him. The city, once blind to his presence, now saw him for what he was. The community reeled as the news broke. Shock, betrayal, disbelief rippling through every street, every home. How well do we really know the people around us? The investigation was no longer a question of if, but when. The truth, long buried, was clawing its way to the surface. The final act was about to begin, and in the interrogation room the walls were closing in. In the sterile light of the interrogation room, the truth finally began to surface. Michael Avery sat across from Detective Sarah Nguyen, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on the table. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant echo of footsteps in the hallway. For hours he denied everything, his voice steady, his expression unreadable. But the evidence was a tide that could not be held back. Sarah laid out the facts one by one. The DNA on the water bottle, the cell tower records, the security footage, enhanced and sharpened showing his shadow in the alley. The timeline, precise and damning. Each detail chipped away at his defenses, each revelation tightening the noose. Michael's composure began to crack. His hands trembled. His gaze faltered. Finally, as the clock ticked past midnight, the dam broke. Michael's voice was barely a whisper as he confessed. He spoke of anger, of impulse, of a moment that spiraled out of control. He had followed Emily into the alley, confronted her, and when she resisted, he lashed out. The details spilled out in halting sentences, how he panicked, how he left her there, how he tried to erase his presence but could never erase the memory. The confession was recorded. Every word a nail in the coffin of his freedom. The detectives listened in grim silence, the weight of justice heavy in the air. For years they had chased shadows, haunted by the question of what happened in those lost minutes. Now at last they had their answer. News of the arrest spread quickly. The city, once paralyzed by fear and suspicion, now reeled with a different kind of shock. Emily's family was notified in the early hours of the morning. Linda Carter wept as she listened to the detective's voice on the phone, relief and sorrow mingling in a torrent of emotion. "We found him," Sarah said gently. "We know what happened." The courtroom was packed on the day of Michael Avery's arraignment. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashing as he was led in, shackled and silent. The judge's voice rang out, clear and final, as the charges were read. The community watched, breathless as justice, long delayed, was finally set in motion. Emily's family sat in the front row, hands clasped, eyes shining with tears. They listened as the details of the case were laid bare, as Michael's confession was played for the court. The pain was raw, but so was the relief. After so many years of not knowing, they finally had the truth. The judge's gavel fell, echoing through the silent courtroom. Michael Avery was found guilty, sentenced to life without parole. Justice at last had been served, but could any verdict truly bring peace? The answer lingered in the air, heavy and unresolved. The city exhaled, the long nightmare finally over. Yet for those left behind, the journey toward healing was only just beginning. The verdict brought closure, but not completion. In the weeks and months that followed, Kansas City tried to return to normal. But the shadow of Emily Carter's disappearance lingered in every quiet moment, every empty street, every cautious glance between neighbors. The city had its answers, but the wounds ran deep. For Emily's family, the truth was a double-edged sword. They could finally lay her to rest, her memory no longer haunted by uncertainty. A small memorial was held in the park where she once played as a child. Friends and family gathered, sharing stories, laughter mingling with tears. Linda Carter placed a single white rose on the memorial stone, her hand trembling but her voice steady. "We remember her as she was, bright, kind, and loved. That's what we hold on to now, yet healing was not simple. The years of waiting, the endless questions, had left scars that would never fully fade. Tom Carter still visited the alley behind the library, standing in silence as the city moved around him. Josh, now grown, carried his sister's memory into adulthood, her absence shaping the man he became. The family learned to live with the ache, to find comfort in ritual and remembrance, but the sense of injustice lingered. Why had it taken so long? How many clues had been missed? How many warnings ignored? The community, too, was changed. Trust, once broken, was slow to return. Neighbors who had once shared coffee and conversation now locked their doors a little earlier, watched their children a little closer. The story of Emily Carter became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. But it also became a testament to resilience, the power of a city to come together, to demand answers, to refuse to forget. Detective Sarah Nguyen, who had reignited the case, found herself both celebrated and haunted. She received letters of thanks, handshakes from strangers, but at night she replayed the investigation in her mind, wondering what else might have been missed, what other stories remained untold. The cold case files still lined the shelves, each one a life interrupted, a mystery waiting for its own spark. In the end, the story of Emily Carter was not just about loss or even about justice. It was about the echoes left behind, the way a single life can ripple through a family, a community, a city. It was about the questions that remain, the lessons learned too late, the hope that endures even in the face of tragedy. In a city full of secrets, how many more stories remain untold? The question lingers, haunting and unresolved, as the camera pans over Kansas City's skyline. Lights flickering in the darkness, each one a life, a story, a possibility. The world moves on. But for those who remember, the echoes never truly fade. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between memory and forgetting, the search for truth continues.